Hey folks, hope you're doing well today. Thank you for tuning in to today's Drift webinar, all about the digital transformation of B2B sales. We have released some fantastic new research today in partnership with the Sales Benchmark Index and Heinz Marketing. I'm super excited to introduce these two gentlemen in a moment. This webinar is being recorded. You will get the slides, the recording, and other resources, including the research, right after it is done. And if you're listening to the recording, thank you very much. We really hope you enjoy it. So let's dive right in. Quick agenda. Some, again, quick introductions. Then we're going to really just talk about what's transpired over the last, you could say 12 months, feels like probably 5 years to a lot of us. But really what's been transpiring, that's a whole other discussion that we'll get into as well. Of course, the last 12 months has accelerated some of this change, but this has been going on for a long time. Then we'll talk about what we found, all of these findings from hundreds and hundreds of B2B sales professionals, and we'll really have a discussion. We want to make this a conversation between all of you. We have 40 plus people listening live right now, so thank you for making some time out of the day to do so. And then we'll follow up with official Q&A. But again, we want to take questions and make this conversational. So my name is Mark Kilens. I'm one of the marketing leaders here at Drift. And now I just want to introduce these two folks. These folks are really smart sellers and marketers, been doing it for a long, long time. First off, in the center, Matt Heinz, president of Heinz Marketing. He and his organization and Drift partnered on doing the research along with Josh Horstmann, partner at Sales Benchmark Index. Josh, I'll have you go first. How you doing? You want to just give a quick background for everyone?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me, and welcome everyone. Yeah, Josh Horstmann. I've been at the firm about 8 years, spent 20 plus years in enterprise sales. And for those who don't know SBI, we're a sales and marketing consulting firm focused on revenue growth, and excited about this digital transformation because we're seeing a lot of it in the industry, working with a lot of clients. So this is top of mind and has been accelerated by the pandemic. So great topic and very timely to be working with Drift and Heinz Marketing on this.
Yeah, we really appreciate the partnership. Thank you for doing it. And again, the data, like we'll see in this moment, is fantastic. So many insights. Thanks, Josh. Can't wait to talk to you more today over the next hour. And then Matt from Heinz Marketing. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good. You know, I've been using this headshot for a long time, and I'm just today realizing I look a little too much like James Carville in this picture, which it's not the best comparison. But no, I'm excited to be here. You know, we work with you guys on a state of conversational marketing report and research last year, and so it was really exciting to do the sales counterpart for that were released today, and some really great insights. I think some good lessons that we can use. We can talk about on the sales side specifically, but then as we combine that broader go-to-market conversational strategy, some really good thinking and some good insights for brands moving forward.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. Again, the theme for today's broadcast conversation is really this notion of how B2B sales has been changing, transforming. We've heard of digital transformation for how long? Let me ask you actually, Josh, and then I'm going to ask you, Matt, and I'm going to ask the audience. Do you remember the first time you heard the term digital transformation? Josh, do you remember?
Yeah, it's been around for quite a bit of time, and I think it's one of those things that it's amorphosized over many. It's like the game of telephone. What does digital transformation mean? But yeah, I remember it from many years ago. Yeah, it is a buzzword that has lots of legs.
Yeah, it's been like too long. You can't even remember the first time you heard it. I feel the same way. How about you, Matt? Do you know the year?
You know, it actually, I might. I think it might have been 2002 because I was at a conference with a bunch of brand marketers, and the entire focus was trying to get. It was sponsored by like MSN and MySpace and AOL, and they were all trying to get these like old 30-second TV, advertisers to put money into digital. And so digital transformation at the time, I think, was very tactical. It's become far more strategic. And I think that, to me, it's not a destination, it's a journey, right? And the rules continue to change and the variables continue to change. And so it's something that even those that did a good job of that maybe 20 years ago, are still working on continuing to refine and improve.
I love that. And as we get into the topic today, folks, can you head over to the Zoom chat and change? I'm calling on you, Matt, actually, because you made a mistake, a snafu. Change the setting to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see. I hate how Zoom does this. It defaults to a different setting versus the open chat conversation. So head over there. Let us know, again, what you think about digital transformation. When was the first time you heard it? We'd love to make this a conversation because, like Matt, what you just talked about, I have Matt, you first, and then Josh, related to this next slide and statement around how buyer enablement to revenue acceleration, moving from buyer enablement to revenue acceleration in this digital age, sales needs to do more than just sell. They must lead. They must lead this journey in transformation of how they sell. So what does that mean to you, Matt, and then Josh?
Well, we just talked about how long digital transformation's been around, and I think this opportunity has been discussed for at least as long. I mean, Challenger Sale was one of the latest books to really talk about this idea that you are not just a seller, that you are you can be a thought leader, you can be a trusted advisor, you can be someone that challenges the thinking of your prospects, and by doing so, you are leading. And I think that, their whole point of sort of teach, tailor, take control means that you're not taking control just of your sale, that you earn the right to help move them towards an objective that means something to them, that you're a guide sort of sometimes against the headwinds that they face in their own organization against achieving some of those results. And to me, that's not just a digital thing, but I think because we are now operating in a largely remote environment, we can't get in front of someone. Some of the traditional relationship building, rapport building, arm around you at the bar kind of thing isn't there anymore. It's even more important to differentiate ourselves with the insights and leadership we provide as sellers.
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, and I'll add to that, a couple thoughts. It used to be when everyone put up a website, that was digital transformation, right? Oh, we got to go digital. We have to have some type of white paper. And for, I think, many years, it was, marketing or the product or the other teams within the functions of an organization that were driving that digital, strategy, transformation, whatever you might call it. But because of, I think, COVID, and I'll break sales into two pieces. There's the new logo sales, so it's going after the new customers. And so now it's more around having to have that digital experience, because you hear it all the time. We're going to talk about the fact that buyers today are going into a digital process much earlier, and they're being forced to do that along that journey. And if you think about on the other side of sales, which is the account management, the renewal teams, the folks that are working with current clients, because of the pandemic, there was a triage, right? It was, okay, we need to keep our base. We need to keep the folks that we have currently as customers. And so those two functions, the digital aspects of that, I think, is important, because there's actually two parallel paths that's happening. It's the ones that are bringing in a new business, and the ones that are trying to keep the business and expand the business. And both of them play an equally, important piece of this, where they're either leading a customer to have an additional conversation, that relationship, keeping them, call it selling back to the base, whatever that is. And then there's also the piece which is leading a customer through that journey who's never done business with you before. So what are those digital touch points, those points of leverage that are important as a buyer, that the sales organization is the tip of the spear? They're the ones now that are talking to more than anyone, the fact that they need to now understand where they're along their journey and how they're going to go through it. So digital is really, I think, accelerated, and more importantly, the sales organization is now being brought into those conversations at a strategic level within the organization to help facilitate it.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, how do you make the sales journey on either side more efficient for the buyer and the seller? And like McKinsey said, 75% plus they found, they didn't say this, but they found this, 75% of sellers and buyers now prefer the digital channels as a way to do business. So it's not just something that, the sales or the businesses are saying needs to happen. It's like, most importantly, what the buyers want. Speaking of buyers and speaking of sales folks, Matt, can you just take us through at a high level the data set that we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes?
Yeah. So it was really important. We've been doing research like this for a while, and like it's who you select as your respondents and who you target is really, really important. So obviously we wanted to get sellers to respond to this, but it was also really important to do a couple things. One, we wanted sales leadership to be heavy in our respondent base. So you see here that over 3/4 of our respondents are VP level above in a sales role. We wanted a diversity of company sizes so we could split the data based on different size and maturity level of company. And we also wanted to make sure we had a diversity of industry. So this wasn't just a bunch of newer SaaS companies that we had. Yeah, we've got some IT and some tech and some software as a service, but we've also got a lot of traditional, a lot of blue chip, a lot of industrial companies responding as well. So with this volume of respondents and this diversity of respondents, it gave us the opportunity to say this represents sellers as a whole, but we also have the opportunity to slice and dice the data to see how some of these selling groups differ.
Awesome. All right. So now we set the stage. Let's dive into the data. Before we do that, there's a question from Stephanie about, do you think conferences are going to come back as they used to, Josh? And I think that's kind of related to this next statement before we dive into an audience poll and then some of the data. And yes, the data will be enlarged on future slides. That was just a kind of a snapshot. So you will be able to see better visuals of the data. But now more than ever, sales teams need to affirm buyers' decisions and guide them towards their desired outcome in meaningful and helpful ways. And a lot of the times that was done through like in-person events, dinners, et cetera, right? In real life. So what is your take on this, Josh, and the take on like, how is the in real life stuff going to come back, do you think?
Yeah, so if there's 3 words on this slide, I would circle if I had a pen here. I would say the first word is affirm. You need to affirm what the buyer's decisions are. You need to help them go through that process. And the second piece is guide, right? You're guiding them. You're not pushing them through a sales process that your company created, right? If the organizations that really made it through COVID, I think in a better place is they were agile and they had speed, meaning they quickly went out to their customers, they quickly went out to their prospects, they adjusted their selling process or customer journeys appropriately to guide versus pushing a product. And the last word I'd say on here is outcome. What is the outcome for the client? It's not your outcome as a seller. Yes, everyone who's on this phone and who's listening to this is thinking about how do I sell? But the biggest thing I think that we've seen a shift in is the affirmation of the decisions, the guiding them through that process, whatever that process is. And then more importantly, what outcome is your solution, your product, your service providing to that client? And so as you marry those together, I think that's where you have the sales cycles that are being, consolidated. You're having win rates go up. You're having customers that are now more importantly becoming an advocate, a referral. Your retention rates are higher because they see and they understand that you are a person. And we'll talk a little bit about the other side of the selling a little bit later in the webinar. But to answer the question around, are we going to have these in-person conferences, regional, national? I think we will go back to some sort of having that. I think there's a bent up, demand for, I just want to get out and see people, right? And so I think there will be a shift back to it. Will it all be where it was prior? Probably not. It'll slowly start to work its way back. But I think there's nothing that's going to replace some of that face-to-face and those events down the road. They'll be on smaller scales. I think they'll take some time to get back to where they were, but I don't know if they'll ever be the shift that we saw prior to this. But yeah, that's how I would sum up this slide, and that's how I would sum up the events coming back.
Awesome. All right, so let's dive into it. The first thing we're going to dive into is sales productivity, channels, then tactics, and then so on. Before we get into sales productivity and what we found from these 250 B2B sellers is a poll we want to have you folks answer. So Persephone, could you launch this poll? How has your sales process changed now that the world is largely digital first? I believe there's 3 answers and it should be live now. So if you folks could head over and just let us know. And if you want to add any commentary to your answer, please be our guest in the chat. Just have it, be seen hopefully to the panelists and attendees. Change that setting in Zoom. But yeah, let us know. Has it stayed the same? Has it changed slightly? Is it a completely new process? Matt, have you changed anything about your organization's sales process? Which one do you fall into?
Well, we have, but I do think some of it is a bit of a bridge. I think, to Josh's point, I love my family and it's nice and convenient to just work from my basement here, but I want to see people. We've been meeting on Zoom for what, 5 or 6 years. We've been meeting face to face for tens of thousands of years. So I think, that human element is still important. I think as we talk to sellers, as we talk to buyers, and sort of, and both sides are relevant to this, there's a level of efficiency for both sides of getting together. I've actually heard many buyers lament the fact they can't devote a couple days or a week to an event and do a ton of due diligence, do a ton of meetings all at once. If you can actually carve out a couple days to do that, buyers see that sometimes as more efficient than having a whole bunch of Zoom meetings and reading a bunch of white papers and doing a bunch of digital selling. So we will get back to a level of balance. But the majority of our time is not face-to-face. The majority of our time is digital. So although some of that face-to-face can be efficient and can be an accelerant of getting that relationship and learning and committing, the digital side is going to continue to grow in share of conversation and share of the journey. And so I think some of those adjustments, even with the bounce back to live events, some of those adjustments on the digital side are here to stay.
Yeah, and it's shocking. Look at the results, everyone. It should be on your screen. The vast majority of you have made some changes, and a third of you have a completely new process.
Yeah, and that's not surprising from what we've seen. Just to add some commentary, I mean, just think about this now. How many of you have had sales process or decisions that got stuck? And what I mean by stuck is deals stalled because companies tighten their budget. So where somebody had an authority to sign off on a certain size opportunity or a deal you're trying to sell, or your solution you're trying to get an expansion or more licenses, because there was this tightening of cash and there was this tightening of decision making, the buying decision team, the BDTs, got bigger, or they become more complex, or things had to go for second and third level approvals. And so when people say, that's a change to a process, right? You have to change and account for where do you now have those types of touch points that are digital, right? And I think that's a big piece of what we saw. So it's great to see that 95% of the people have some type of change or a new one. The 5%, I would say, now's an opportunity as 2021 gets underway. Take a look at that, because I'm sure there's some things that need to be changed for the way you guys are selling.
Yeah, starting with maybe sales productivity, Josh. Sellers, what we found, feel more productive since transitioning their processes to remote and digital channels. Let me say that again. More productive since changing. That's interesting. I mean, if you look at some of these bullet points, right, in Q4 of 2020, 65% of sales respondents felt their sales productivity had increased, right? And then since early 2020, B2B sales teams have minimized the gaps in their digital readiness. And we had some comments in the chat from folks, Stephanie, so much more through video chat, webinars, etc. I saw some stuff in the data around not only is, of course, synchronous live video gone up, of course, but a lot more around the pre-recorded asynchronous video has gone up, right? So, Leon, our sales agility is fueled by empowerment and trust. Absolutely, right? So on this next slide, we got a great visual of some of these changes based off of I'm being more productive, neutral. So how is transitioning that sales process to remote or digital impacted your productivity? I'm encouraged to see this, right, Josh and Matt? I mean, it's a sign of, if we're being more productive, this stuff is going to stick around then, to your comments before.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I think that there's a couple things going on here. I think that by switching to more digital channels to sell, we are taking out some of the soft time before and after that selling time, right? Like you don't have time on the plane, you don't have time waiting in someone's lobby. Like you've got, because you're digital, it's a more efficient channel, and so you're able to leverage more of that time. That's huge. I think what we have seen, though, we saw this in the commentary and the verbatims in the research, and we've certainly seen this anecdotally. Going to a more digital model doesn't make people procrastinate any less, right? It doesn't help, doesn't make it so that people are spending even sort of inherently more focused. So I think you have to be more disciplined when you're sort of in front of the same screen more often, but it certainly creates the opportunity for you to sort of build a set of tools and processes that allow you to lean in on more conversations, on deeper conversations, on more meaningful conversations with more buyers more often.
Yeah, I would say the question is probably, I was just going to make this comment, I think, too, there's a balance between, being more productive, and actually the results are coming out of that productivity. So, where we've seen this tweaking or changing of the sales process or implementing a new one, win rates are going up. The percentage of reps that are hitting quota. Now, let me put an asterisk on there. Depending on the industry, like COVID decimated certain industries, and it was an accelerant for other industries, right? So, kind of putting that to the side, folks are able to, shrink their sales process, their selling time, as far as, it took from X days to close a deal to Y days to close a deal. Win rates went up. ASPs in some instances even went up. So productivity, when done correctly, between the process being implemented, the technology to help you have that productivity gains, has really helped, I think, folks, have a better sense of sales. And if you look at the talent that's out there right now, there is a shortage of really good sales talent. So, I think all of these things have kind of fueled this transformation that, is bigger and broader than just digital, but productivity tools and the productivity processes are really accelerated through the last year.
I love this. And we got some great comments. So folks, keep it up. We're going to move on to sales channels now. As we make this transition in what the data told us, Jack makes a great comment around the situation that we're all in has broken down the sales and marketing teams in terms of the disconnect that has existed in a lot of the organizations in the past. And I would agree. I've seen similar things across our customers. You have to be now more aligned than ever at targeting and qualifying the right ideal customers, right? Both on the new side, but also on the expansion side, to the comment, Josh, you made. So I think this is a good thing for sure. We talk a lot about that at Drift in terms of putting the customer at the center of everything. And now, this situation maybe lends itself to that. And Bruce has a good question that we will get to a little bit later on in terms of, they're more productive, but is their performance better? And if you look at now the channel side of this though, like I mentioned before, video reigning supreme, not a huge surprise. But there is, I think, when you look at 77% of sellers have used video more since the beginning. Okay, makes sense. 76% have used pre-recorded videos more, like I was saying before, and 32% of sellers report using automated chatbots more. So I guess my question to you both is, did the pandemic force people that were having digital interactions with buyers in the past and customers to now always turn the video on? You always have to have your video on. You always now need to be more like thoughtful in how you do your pre-call and post-call follow up. Like what's your take on that, Matt, and then Josh?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a huge win, I think, in the last year. What used to be just phone calls are now video calls. And yes, that is more tiring than just a phone call, but it's a more valuable conversation. I think when you're just on audio, it's too easy to be multitasking for both buyer and seller, quite frankly, but especially for a buyer. If you commit to a meeting and you're on video, you're far more likely to be focused, which means you're far more likely to stay with the conversation and to get something out of it and to move forward. So I think that if we're moving to digital, we have to figure out how to maintain as many of the elements of in-person conversations as we can, because the more of those you're using, the more senses you're engaging, everything from what you hear to what you see to maybe even what you touch, right? I mean, we're seeing many sellers, sell remotely, but put physical things in front of their prospects, like before the meeting. Like we have manufacturing clients who, their biggest challenge 11 months ago was, I've got sellers that go meet with people, right? I've got sellers that go meet with people. Exactly. I've got sellers that go meet with people and are used to taking a box of samples. It's like, well, you might have to mail it to them in advance, right? I mean, you have whiteboards that you use in video, just simply customizing a message in that little, that little still image before someone clicks on a video. So they see, oh, this really was just for me. It's going to get them significantly more likely to click on the video. So, I think the key to me is incorporating more of those human elements, more of those natural conversational elements, natural human to human interaction elements into your marketing, into your communication channels. Those are the trends that are winning, that are helping sellers win today.
Yeah, let me, I think there's a couple of questions here on chatbots. So Mark, I'll let you answer that here in a second, but just to build on what Matt had mentioned, when video first started to take off, you think about, close your eyes and think back to March and April and May of last year. and how many people were using video, but they were getting on a phone call and they weren't turning on the camera, right? And so, we were trying to just coach people to say, when you first jump on a call, be the first one to turn on your camera, right? And I think people have slowly adopted that. I mean, it was a whole thing around, we went through the home office and kids, and there's still a lot of e-learning going on, and all those, putting your backgrounds and all the things you need to do around video. And I think that's become the norm now. People spend, the first 5, 10, 15 minutes just, catching up socially, or, finding out how their family's doing. We talked about snow when we got on this call. So I think those things that naturally happen when we were face-to-face, and when we go back to being face-to-face at some point, are always going to happen. I think where we also see now is the opportunity, and Matt, you hit it great. I mean, you have to send information to somebody ahead of time when they're on that video call. So think about it. You have more productivity. People are scheduling calls back to back to back. So there's no more walking between meetings or walking between floors or getting on a train or getting on a plane or in an Uber or whatever that is. You are now consolidating back to back meetings. So people's attention spans, you have to send that information ahead of time, whether it is digital, right? Because now that's what you're going to be getting. And so the preparation is really needed to make sure that you're having a successful conversation, whether it be on video or on a phone call. And I think that's an important piece. So that would be my comments. And I think one of the questions that came up is around chatbots. I know, Mark, you guys work a lot on that, so maybe you want to touch on that briefly.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely happy to. We're going to talk more about it throughout the next half an hour, so I'll quickly just talk about it now. And I think Leon has a good comment too. He's finding chatbots to be more valuable as it relates to scoring leads, qualifying leads, improving deal velocity. And for me and us at Drift, what we've seen is, and our customers have seen is, you're really maximizing the attention and intent of someone visiting, your website or engaging, with your brand through a channel, and you're meeting them where they are, and you're able to not only do that on the marketing side of the business, right? Try to engage with them, understand them, help them understand a bit more about, who you are in that moment, how you can help solve one of their problems, and then recommend them to the next thing. But you can also give that signal of interest and intent to your salesperson, to your sales development team, to your account executive, to your account manager. And if it's a visitor who fits in within your ICP, or it's a target account, or is like a really strategic, important named account, then great, that person's going to get notified either on their computer, on their mobile device, and will be able to react and respond in a moment's notice. Or if they're not available, then you can use chat as a way to kind of catch them regardless if that person isn't available, and they could schedule a meeting with you down the road, leave you a message, etc. So we'll talk more about that, but I think both for sales and marketing, back to Jack's comment around bring the teams together, messaging via your website and your different channels is a great way to engage people. So let's move on though, because we have a ton of data to get through. We have the second poll of today's broadcast. So folks, head over to your screen if you're not looking at the slides, and we got this poll around: how do you tackle burnout for remote sellers who are essentially always in the office? Yes, I'm always in the office. We all are always in the office. So we have 5 different answers you can select from. I don't actually remember if we made this select all of them or just select one of them. We'll see. But what have you done, as people answer really quickly? I'm going to put the spotlight on you, Josh. What have you done personally to handle burnout?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the balance, right? So a couple of things that I've done personally, as well as I know our firm has done. Number one is trying to develop some boundaries. So, I will put the phone down between dinner hours. I will, try not to respond when I'm going out to do something. And if, when I say going out, that could be taking a walk around the neighborhood, because depending on where you live and being able to actually go out to restaurants and dining yet. I do a lot of calendar blocks. I mean, meaning if I'm going to be doing prospecting, or if I'm going to be doing something that's around conversations, I will block an hour so others in my organization just see that it's a block. And then, and our firm's done a really good job around wellness days, putting something in place where the employees have something that's, whether it's, doing a class, a Peloton, or going for, people, there's a lot of things around mental health and whatever those things are. So just personalized wellness and realizing that there is burnout. It's true. It's happening. Productivity is great on one side, but you can't burn out your people. So those are a couple of things I've seen and done.
Love it. Love it. Let's see what people had to say. Persephone, if you don't mind closing that down. Let's just see. Top number one, developing boundaries. Yeah, I love that. Being intentional with your calendar, Matt.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think, to what Josh said, I mean, some of the things I have a block in the morning that is sacred, that is sort of my eating the frog time. I've got, that one thing that if I get that one thing done, I'll be successful today, but it's usually something a little intimidating. It's bigger. But, if I just crank it, if I just, block everything else out and get it done and make sure there's no meetings during that time, no matter what happens the rest of the day, it's been a successful day. The other thing I block is I don't know about you, for me, I have to schedule time to work out. Like if I schedule time to work out, whether it's getting on the Peloton for even just a 20-minute ride, something short between meetings, or getting out and walking, like I will schedule meetings that I know can be just a phone call check-in, and I'll go do it while I walk around the neighborhood. And if I just hope I find time for that, it won't happen. Like I got a business to run. I got, 3 kids in remote school. I have to schedule that time, make sure my wife knows I've scheduled that time when it's scheduled, and then it gets done. And simply having that, whether beginning and middle of the day, those breaks make it so much easier to be productive and focused when it's time to work.
Yeah, one of the things that my wife and I have done every Sunday now is we spend about 15 minutes like planning and visualizing and confirming the week ahead between our 2 schedules. And like that has been actually a big change and a really strong positive benefit to us all. And I think, we'll continue that for the future, especially as life starts to get a little bit more hectic when we start to do stuff in person again. So small things like that go a long way, build up some of these habits. So let's go through 3 more things now before we get into another set of data. We're going to talk about sales tactics now, the sales technology you should be thinking about, and sales process. And of course, we've talked a little bit about the sales technology already, but we'll double click. So on this slide, we found in this survey, in this study, B2B sellers spend their time moving in every direction, which is no surprise, right? Like you said, Josh, you gotta, really guide them and cater to their needs to get to the positive outcome for them and for you, right? You can't be too rigid in how you sell. So you got to make sure that, you're nimble. Of course, you're going to be busy. And what we found though, what we saw in this data, if I go to the next slide, is the frequency in which you spend your time across these efforts, right? I would say, actually, I'm not going to actually answer that. I want to ask you, Josh, and then Matt, are you surprised in the distribution of this, given when we did this survey versus the world that we used to live in, when it was much more evenly balanced between digital and in real life? Like what surprises you?
Yeah, the first thing that jumped out at me when I saw the data was the high level of prospecting and qualifying net new buyers. I mean, that's encouraging. And what I mean by that is, typically you'll see selling time in that high 60s, low 70s, right? And that's where those are things that are not in the selling aspects of admins and trainings and travel and all those types of things. So to see that as a high number is encouraging. So that means that sales teams are getting into a rhythm where they're doing the things we talked about. They're blocking their calendars, they're using tools, they're spending the time, guiding and looking at outcomes for the people that they're working with on the other end of the video or the camera. So yeah, that's the first thing that jumped out at me. And then on the opposite spectrum is meeting with unqualified net new buyers. So then I start to look at, okay, where can technology at the bottom at 34.3%, that's still a third of their time that they're spending. So how do you think around, I need to get them out, right? And so what is there? Is there a lead gen team? Is there a development team? Is there something that I can do that could be a lower cost resource or technology, because that's still a large portion of time there. So those are the 2 areas that I think that just the data that I took a look at when I went through this.
Yeah, I mean, I look at those middle 2 numbers, right? I mean, this is whereas if I'm a seller, I want to spend all of my time meeting with customers where I have upsell opportunities and meeting with qualified net new buyers. The more time I get in front of those prospects, whether it's in person or selling remotely or with, with a chat bot or video, like that's where I want to spend my time. And the stuff on the left and to the right, I mean, I want to spend less time on. Like some of these are really important. Like you have to have a disciplined approach to prospecting and to continuing to build your pipeline. but following up to reschedule meetings, like meeting with others internally to coordinate, even some of the elements of qualifying prospects, like these are things that, if you're doing it manually, you need to find ways to automate it. If you're doing it as an individual, you need to find ways that robots can do some of that for you, right? The more of your time you're focused. I mean, you could say like, I'm spending more time actively selling. How are you increasing your active selling time and making the most of that time to get these two middle numbers higher? Like that, whether you're a seller, whether you're leading a go-to-market team, especially if you're in a sales enablement function, like that is your job. Get these two middle numbers significantly higher.
Yeah, and I apologize, Josh. I did the sad face drawing on the wrong one. I didn't read.
I knew
I
what you meant.
appreciate
Yeah.
the doodle effort though. Like that is very impressive.
Yeah.
No, but it's good. It's like, to your point, enablement and technology, which is actually the next section we want to talk about as it relates to what we found in this study. Because like, yeah, you can use technology to help with the follow-up, the scheduling and enablement to help with that, but also help with like actually prospecting and qualifying, right? So you can make that even stronger and make the meetings you have with existing customers or new customers, potential customers, better as well. So like, let's actually talk about the tech side of this equation. So in this part of the survey, we found a couple of interesting things. Number one, 61% of respondents, which were 84% of the productive sellers that were self-identified. So 84% of people out of about 254, I think, respondents self-identified as being productive. 61% of them strongly believe that their current digital ecosystem will support their revenue goals in 2021 and beyond. Okay. Flip side, 39% of respondents, 57% of the somewhat productive or unproductive respondents believe their digital ecosystem could be improved or optimized. So what does this tell you, Josh, as you look at like the people that are productive and they feel like they have, a strong kind of set of digital ecosystems? Still, there's a lot of room for improvement, it looks like, but then the people that aren't that productive and they feel like they really need some help.
Yeah, so two things jump at me. The first one, I think someone maybe even had put it in the chat, is the people that are adopting the technology versus the people that are not. So the folks, and you see, if they're being productive, they're embracing this new normal, and they're taking the tools or taking the process updates, whatever it is, and they're using that to their advantage, and the systems are supporting them, the technology is supporting them, and they're being successful. The other thing I think about is talent. 50% of your success is based on the performance conditions that you surround your sales teams with. The other 50% of it is the people you have, the team on the field. And if you don't have the right talent, this is where you might need to make some tough decisions. So if you're not embracing the talent or the technology, if you're not embracing where things are going and the process changes as an organization, then you might have to make that decision on, do I have the right talent? If I can coach them to be there, great. If I can't, tough decisions have to be made because the organization needs to move forward. So those are the two things that came to me when I looked at this.
So question for you then, how do you, this is coming from someone in the chat, how do you get sellers to adopt the the digital selling tools? Like, is there a generational divide that has to be overcome? And if so, like, how do you get people to adopt it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you can do out there around, gamification. There's things that you can do around enablement and training. And, when people say there's generational, yes, there's always going to be generational changes. But think about some of, the older population is embracing technology. They're using FaceTime. They're using the Google Duo. I mean, you can't blame it on someone's age or blame it on someone's legacy of being in a certain industry. I think I put that to the side. It really comes down to the person, and can you help train that person or coach that person to get to where they need to be? So there's things such as gamification, enablement, compensation that then is driven by some of those things. There's ways to help change those behaviors. But, to me, I think it's really a person by person that you have to have that coaching cadence where there can't be a peanut butter spread across and everyone's going to get in line. You have to take a look at the individuals as a coach and a mentor and then try and help them get there.
Yeah,
Love
Mark,
it.
you showed in some of the earlier slides, it's very
Mm.
clear that people are adopting technology in greater capacity. A lot more people
Mhm.
have video tools, a lot more people have chatbots. They've got so that the toolbox is improving. I think people are realizing I'm not going to solve this by throwing more money at technology. I have to get better at process. I have to get better at division of labor. I have to get better at how disciplined and precise I am at the systems and processes that I follow to be a consistent, predictable seller. And so I think there's definitely a point of diminishing return on the tool side. I think this is reflective, and you showed that, so the divide between people that are already productive and people that aren't, of how good they're feeling. I think a lot of people, as they adopt video, as they adopt chat, I mean, they're saying, I got the tools, I need to be better at using them.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's also just about the experience, right? It's about the experience for you as a seller, like the satisfaction of you using them, and then the satisfaction and experience of the customer, of the buyer. Like
Yeah.
I think this kind of shows the 61.4% here talks to the McKinsey stat that they found, recently, back in 2020, which is, again, over 75% of people who do B2B selling, according to McKinsey, prefer the digital channels and the digital experiences, both on the customer and the seller side. So I don't know. I think this stuff's going to stick around. So let's do one more poll and then go into a rapid fire of 9 more interesting stats. Can you believe that? We have 9 more interesting stats to share with you all. So this talks to something you spoke to earlier, Josh, around how much time, and we saw it in the data, how much time should you be selling, prospecting, closing, right? Those types of activities, not training and enablement, not admin type tasks. You find it to be the benchmark, your organization, 68 to 70% plus. Is that what you guys see?
Yeah, that's what we're seeing now. And, even that's being pushed up a little bit depending on what type of technology organizations have embraced or deployed. So yeah, that's kind of where the benchmark has been over the last, call it 18 to 24 months.
We strive to do this better every single day at Drift. We can still be better, but around communicating with sales, the most important campaign to focus on, like the one thing this month, the one thing the next month, like what should you be focused on? Like today, for example, because of all this data that just came out, we're asking our sales development team and our account executives doing prospecting, hey, update your outreach sequences. This is some amazing data. This is amazing findings. Use this as part of your outreach and prospecting, right? It's just that constant communication, alignment with enablement on the sales productivity side is important as well. But I love your comment, Lindsay. So what do we have for the results? All right, so Josh, what do you think? You see the results?
I mean, this is common from what we see across many organizations. What I would say is a best practice, if you can do it, is to run a time study within your organization. And this could be as simple as a self-reported time study. It could be there's technology and tools to do time studies. And make a snapshot in time and think about aspirationally how I can get 5%, 10%, 15%, eventually try and get to that benchmark. It's not a surprising stat. We see it across most of the people we work with, and most organizations are below that benchmark. But then start to do the math and start to think about where technology, where process improvements are, where the people and the talent can be improved, and then start to think about those are real numbers when you can get that up. So yeah, not surprising, Mark, but something that I think organizations should really focus on.
Yeah, I like how you laid it out. People, process, technology, and then even priorities. It's like the 3 Ps plus the T. You just kind of align those things together if you can. So let's kind of glide this plane in for landing, this broadcast into its hangar, and talk about 3 challenges that we saw as part of this research. So yeah, we talked about sales teams being busy and not spending enough time with qualified buyers. Poor data and process can hurt buyers and sellers, right? That's like a lot of admin, there's a lot of distraction, etc. Lack of automation and self-service hinders selling and buyer enablement. It just goes back to the experience for me, like the overall selling experience. And is that going to be a net positive for the buyer and the customer? Is it going to be a brand, enabler? I'm trying to say basically, is it going to help you build goodwill with your buyers and customers, right? Help your brand be thought of in a positive light, or is it going to be, a hindrance to that? And I think that's really important today as more and more things become so commoditized and there are more options than ever. So let's look at each of these with 3 data points, guys. Folks, let us know what you think. But the first one, busy, not productive. So 3 data points. Matt, which one do you want to talk to? And then Josh.
Well, I mean, the idea that we've got sellers spending their time with unqualified buyers. I mean, you appropriately put the frowny face on that earlier with your high tech translucent red pen there. But I think that if and this is marketers and sales enablement teams, if you are putting unqualified leads in front of prospects or in front of your buyers and saying, oh, you're in front of your sellers and saying, oh, you need to follow up with every lead, you need to make sure you're calling all the leads. Like this is. I mean, this is not just a waste of their time. This is the opportunity cost of not spending that time on qualified buyers is massive. And you take this percentage down a couple percentage points, it can have a force multiplier effect on the productivity of your sales team. So, I look at that and say, like, ideally this is 0, right? Whenever we say should, it's aspirational. So getting it there immediately is difficult, but if you're spending that much time on unqualified buyers, there are likely some things you could be doing in your lead scoring and your filters to impact that number significantly.
Yeah, and I'll go to the other side of the slide. So that one goes down and the one on the left goes up, right? So it's how do you leverage what we've been talking about on this call? What is the research showing us? And, you want to get that number up, right? So ideally, if I'm a salesperson or if I want to be meeting with those qualified individuals. And so what can marketing be doing? What can the organization as a whole enablement be doing to help me get better qualified opportunities in the door? Where can I spend the time to move them digitally through a process and help them, find the outcome? Can I guide them through that process? The one thing on the previous slide that really stood out to me too is a lot of organizations create content, they create information, they create processes in a silo, meaning they do it within their own organization rather than getting on the phone, talking to whether they have an advisory board, talking to their customers, talking to their prospects. Are they doing win-loss calls on all opportunities, not reporting what sales puts in a CRM, actually finding out what is the journey that a buyer wants to go on? And so when you have poor data and processes and you've built it internally, well, there is the first mistake many organizations make. So, as you think through this holistically, I would also take a step back and say, hey, are we going outward in versus just building it in a vacuum or in a conference room or in a Zoom call or whatever that is? So that number on the left goes up, the number on the right will go down.
I love that. One of the things that we do using hopefully good data, not poor data, like this slide says and is speaking to, but using good data, Josh, is we build customer journeys using, we use Visible and Marketo. So just using the visible touch points, we look at the journey a customer takes through our content, through our events, through the interactions with Drift, right? Through the Drift bot, and really understanding how someone becomes a customer. And it really, you can look at data all day, of course, right? But it really humanizes the data and helps everyone across the organization, C-level all the way down to sellers, understand what really is happening, the dynamics that are really happening, and shows the journey in a timeline format of these key moments and how we can be better or replicate more of these key moments.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Yep. And then validate it with interviews, validate it with calls to make sure that what you're putting on that whiteboard or that, whatever the technology is, you're capturing that aligns to what the customer is doing. And you're doing that on a regular basis. It's not a one-time exercise. It has to be done quarterly or biannually or annually to make sure that it's aligning to the market. Yep. Great point.
Bad data is the silent killer of good intentions for sales and marketing teams. It's not something you see, right? I mean, you see what's on the website, you see what's in the campaign. You don't see the bad data. You don't see the siloed data, but holy cow. I mean, you look at these numbers here and you think, how do you justify an investment in a single source of truth across platforms for your data? It's not a sexy initiative. It's not as sexy as saying well, let's go do a new offer. Let's go do some of those new campaigns that are exciting to get out and make us look good in front of the sales team. But you invest in data, you will create, honestly, for the last 50 minutes, a lot of the problems, a lot of the constraints that we've seen, you start to you address and solve for many of those by improving your data strategy.
Yeah, I circled the one on the right on this one, number 2. 41% say buyers are frustrated by repeating the same information. Like this goes back to that thing my soapbox around, like how your brand is perceived, right? And like how good is the sales process and how good is the handoff or introduction from one person to another into the most magical moment of a customer's life cycle, which is right after they bought typically. How do you make sure the time right after they bought is special, is amazing, and delivers the value ahead of what you promised?
Yeah.
All right. So I hope people are liking my skills of drawing on Zoom, which I think is very underrated. I I don't think enough people do it. I do it a lot when I'm on a sales call or a customer success call. Anyway, last point, lack of automation. We actually did another study, and it was released last week with the Marketing AI Institute. This is more on the marketing side, but we looked at the state of marketing AI and automation and the promises and like 49 different use cases. And a lot of those use cases are related to sales, of course. But Josh, which one of these 3 data points do you want to kind of pick at for a couple minutes, and then we can wrap it up with 1 or 2 final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll take the one on the right, around the 28% slow responsiveness or poor sales follow-up. I mean, that is the thing that kills deals. I mean, think about how frustrating we all are as consumers, and the lack of a salesperson who, you know, when you leave a call, whether it's with an existing client or whether it's with a new prospect, how quickly are you getting them the information, or how quickly you're helping guide them to the next step in whatever their journey is. And so, you know, when you see a number like that, it's something that you kind of own that yourself, right? Unless you truly don't have what they need and you can't provide it, be honest with them and say, hey, it might take me a little bit of time, set the expectations correctly up front, but there's no reason why that number should be there. And I think that's an opportunity for many organizations to improve.
So we had a couple of questions around like, how do we fix this? A lot of what you're saying is relevant to account management and account care. 100% agree with you. I'm biased, but check out our free conversational sales course. We have a book if you'd rather read about conversational selling, but we really believe across the 3 of us that conversational selling solutions are what matter and are what people in this study found to be really successful. So let's talk about that right now. So I appreciate that question, Stephanie. That was very timely. I'm not sure if Matt planted you in the audience to ask that. He might have. But conversational sales solutions play a critical role in digital transformation and enable that transformation in B2B sales. We've been seeing it for now 5 years at Drift. 50,000 of our customers have seen it. So according to this study of 250, B2B sellers, more than a third of those were at the executive level. 9 in 10, 90% of the people asked in this survey believe conversational sales solutions are valuable in their sales process. Okay, Matt, then Josh, out of the sub bullets on this slide, what do you want to quickly talk about? And then we can just truly wrap it up. Maybe answer 1 or 2 questions and then off we go. So Matt, which one do you want to double click on?
Well, I mean, for me, there's some of these up front that just talk about you've got, your ability to automate some of the standard, repeatable, predictable components of your process allows you to lean more into just the actual conversational element, right? If you're an actor and you don't know your script and you're reading from cards or whatever, you're focused on the words. If you know your script, if that is an automated part of your system, you can focus on being an actor. You can focus on performing, right? And I think the same goes with conversational sales solutions. You can be a conversational seller, but if you have to do all the back office work, if you have to do all the data connections yourself, you're not going to have enough time for selling, and you're going to be too focused on the manual things that are manual that should be automated. So you're not as good in the moment with that prospect. So if you can automate the components that need to be automated, it allows you to be more human in this conversation. Even though you're using digital channels, you can lean in, you can focus more on the buyer, you can be more human, which will get you more engagement and conversion.
Yeah, the one thing I'll just say is time. Look at the third one, right? We are in a want it now society. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, whether I'm on the phone or I'm going through a process. So to me, it's learn faster and accelerate those opportunities where you can.
Love it. Yeah. Meet the buyer where they are, right? Like real time, instantaneous, if it's not instantaneous, maybe it's within the same day or the next day. Let's not like make people wait for a long, long time. And that is really one of the cores to how we think about digital transformation of B2B sales. It's this new way of people researching, engaging, and making decisions both on their own and through digital means. So folks, we really hope you enjoyed today's chat, today's conversation. If you have any questions, we have about 1 or 2 minutes to answer 1 or 2. That's fine. As you think of maybe 1 or 2 questions, feel free to, again, download the whole report. I mean, there is so much data in this report. It's free, no email address required. It's all on the website. Check it out. If you want to get the PDF, just engage with the Drift bot. You'll get the PDF. You can send that to people as well. But it's open. It's free. Greg, thank you. And Matt, again, thanks for the shout out for the red highlighting skills. But really, Josh, we had a pleasure working with your organization, SBI, Sales Benchmark Index, on the study. I hope we do more in the future. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Great opportunity, and hope everyone got a lot from this. And digital's here. It's not going away. It's what you do with it. So great learnings today. Thanks for the conversation, Mark and Matt.
Yeah, and I agree. And Matt, again, always a pleasure working with your organization. And to give folks who are still around a heads up, we are going to be working on a combination of the state of conversational marketing data and the state of conversational sales now, and putting them together into something. Not exactly sure what that looks like quite yet, but it's going to come, and it's going to have to deal with customer journeys. I can assure you of that. And looking at it from a buyer's perspective, not just from a marketer's and seller's perspective. So stay tuned.